Today, Nolly Elementary would like to recognize all of our May Leaders of the Month. We are so proud of these students for their outstanding leadership here at Nolly, in the classroom, on the playground, in the lunchroom, and always displaying the 7 habits. Today, I will recognize each student in each grade level and tell you a little something about them. Okay, starting off in kindergarten in Mrs. Parton's room, we have Lucia Simons. Mrs. Parton said Lucia is proactive. She said, I am proud to see Lucia be positive when things get hard. I love to see her cheer on others when they do well. Also, in Mrs. Parton's room, we have Jacob Yaniff, who puts first things first. Jacob is a hard worker. Mrs. Parton is proud of his drive to get his work done neatly. She said, I love the details he has in his coloring. Keep it up, Jacob. In Mrs. Rankin's room, we have Madison Hartman. Mrs. Rankin said Madison's beginning to buckle down and put her nose to the grind. She has been working so hard and not giving up when things get tough. We are very proud of you, Maddie. Also, we have Luca Neidert, who puts first things first. Luca is taking pride in his classwork. When finished, he loves to share his work with Mrs. Rankin. Keep putting first things first. We also have Mallory Harris from Mrs. Zukowski's room, who was nominated by Mrs. Tucker for synergizing. She was also nominated by Mrs. Zukowski. They said you can find Mallory synergizing with peers in both Mrs. Zukowski's room and in Mrs. Tucker's room. Her sweet personality and positive attitude make her a welcome addition to our classroom families. Keep shining bright, Mallory. Also in Mrs. Zukowski's room, we have Willow Strickland, who is proactive. Willow has made learning her big rock. Willow has been putting forth great effort during wind time. Way to go and keep persevering. Also, we have Hazel Young in Mrs. Zukowski's room, who is proactive. Hazel has been finding joy while at school. She is coming to school happy and working hard all day long. Great job, Hazel. Also in Mrs. Craig's class is Everly Vu, who demonstrates all of the 7 habits. Mrs. Craig said Everly and her family recently moved to our community. What a welcome member of our class. It took Everly no time at all to settle into our classroom routine and the kindergarten responsibilities. Mrs. Craig said, I am so proud of her and how hard she works, and she has made so many friends. We are blessed to have you, Everly. In first grade, in Mrs. Beard's class, we have Sean Elias for being proactive. Sean is new to Nolly this year and has been doing such a wonderful job. He shows he is a leader by coming to the carpet ready to learn with his eyes on the teacher, and he is always ready to listen. Way to go, Sean. In Mrs. Bowser's room, we have Liam B., who begins with the end in mind. Liam sets a goal to improve his iReady. He took his time on his test, and his test results rocked. Way to go, Liam. We have Savannah Hadamio in Mrs. Bowser's room, who demonstrates all 7 habits. Savannah is very kind, she is hardworking, and she is helpful. She always tries her best. Way to be a great student and a great leader. In Mrs. Fiesler's room, we have Rory Longfellow, who sharpens the saw. Rory is enthusiastic about her learning, but knows how to have fun too. Way to go, Rory. Also in Mrs. Fiesler's room, we have Josh Backer, who is proactive. Josh is always doing his best to grow his brain and show off his knowledge. In Mrs. Rector's room, we have Toby Varner. Toby demonstrates all 7 habits. Toby is a ray of sunshine in our classroom and our school. He is a leader in every way. He is a hard worker and a friend to all. Congratulations to you, Toby. We are all so proud of you. Okay, moving on to second grade, we'll start off with Mrs. Van Dorsten's room. We have Lydia Gamble. Mrs. Van Dorsten said Lydia has made a lot of progress in class. She works hard and is always following directions. Mrs. V said, I am very proud of her effort in second grade. We also have Gideon Lepley. Gideon has recently made better choices in regards to his behavior and paying attention in class. Mrs. Van Dorsten said, I am so proud of the effort he has made in second grade. Way to go, Gideon. In Mrs. Grandin's class, Mrs. Grandin's students nominated the May Leaders of the Month. These 4 students received the most votes, and following are some of the comments their classmates made about them. First is Elijah Finley. Elijah has grown a lot this year with his effort. He tries hard to make proactive choices and adds a lot to our classroom learning each day with his participation. Also, we have Danica Schreffler. Danica synergizes with others because she tries to be a good friend. She is proactive, hardworking, and listens quietly and works neatly. We have Cadence Hardy, who puts first things first at school. She works hard and synergizes well with others. She tries to follow the 7 habits and is very caring and helpful. And finally, in Mrs. Grandin's class, we have Bryn Strader. Bryn has really learned how to synergize with others in Mrs. Grandin's classroom this year. She is a great friend and brings joy and always has a lot of grit. In Mrs. Slimak's room, we have Violet Phillips, who is proactive. Violet has a can-do attitude each day. She comes to class prepared to work hard and is always kind to others. We have Paisley Belcher in Mrs. Slimak's room, who puts first things first. Paisley has worked hard in second grade this year. She's made a great improvement on spending time on things that are the most important. She is definitely putting first things first. Way to go, second grade. Okay, moving on to third grade. In Mrs. Braley's room, we have Erickson Vu, who is proactive. Erickson is new to Nolly, but is already a leader. He comes in every day, right on task, with a can-do attitude. He will make a great addition to the fourth grade team next year. We also have Colton Poling, who is proactive and thinks win-win. We all learn from our mistakes, and that is exactly what Colton has done this month. He started working hard on something that he really doesn't like, which is math. He has been making every attempt to work hard, to play math fact games, and to prove his facts. His fourth grade teachers are going to love your grit, Colton. Way to go. We also have in Mrs. Esterly's room, Jagger Sloot, who puts first things first. Jagger has worked extremely hard this year, including staying after school to make sure he gets his work completed. Great job putting your education before sports. Way to go, Jagger. We also have Maddox Smith, who is in Mrs. Stassens' class, but the nomination is from Mrs. Esterly. She said Maddox is a super kind young man. He gets along with everyone and is always offering to help other kids with their work. Way to synergize, Maddox. In Mrs. Stassens' class, we have Calvin Kemp, who puts first things first. Calvin has been such an important part of our class this year. He has found the perfect balance of having lots of silly fun, but also someone we can count on to know what's going on and to be a role model for others. Thank you, Calvin. We also have Trent Mazak, who begins with the end in mind. Trent is unmatched in our classroom for setting a goal, working hard to get there, and usually meeting that goal. His absolute excitement towards learning will be missed next year. Way to go, Trent. In Mr. Straub's room, we have Shane Taylor. Shane sharpens the saw. Shane has really learned to take the time to sharpen the saw. He is very creative with his drawings, music, and lyrics. We are glad Shane joined us at Nolly. Okay, and finally, our fourth graders. In Mrs. Matson's room, we have Liam Glendenning. Liam puts first things first. Mrs. Matson said Liam works hard to do well and reach his goals. He is also proactive. He was absent a few days and made sure to complete all of his work in a timely manner. He also asked if there's anything he can do to help boost his grades. Keep working hard, Liam. You will do well at the middle school. In Mrs. Gardner's class, we have Nora Kenley, who thinks win-win and puts first things first. Nora has worked hard to make great growth this year in fourth grade. She often looks out for others and puts their needs before her own. Way to go, Nora. Thank you. In Mrs. Toast's class, we have Mason Cayley, who thinks win-win. Mason is such a kind fourth grader. He is always caring about others. He thinks win-win all the time. Thanks for that, Mason. Also, we have Hayden Fink, who seeks first to understand. Hayden listens to second graders each day as he helps them with their work. Thank you, Hayden, as you always seek first to understand. In Mrs. Oakes' room, we have Lindy Hubbard, who is proactive. Lindy has done a good job choosing positive actions and positive attitudes. She has grown into a proactive leader. Great job, Lindy. We also have Anna Whiteman in fourth grade, who puts first things first. Anna has been more responsible with her homework and is really improving. She is definitely ready to be a fifth grade leader. Way to go, Anna. Congratulations to all of the Nolly Leaders of the Month. The entire staff here at Nolly is so proud of you. Please keep up the great work and your outstanding leadership. Way to go.